Hatsune Miku, a virtual singer with a song catalog ranging into the thousands, has a long-running line of video games dedicated to her, and is one of Japan's most recognized cultural icons who has collabed with Fortnite, Domino's Pizza, and even Google. The sheer significance of this virtual pop star is almost unreal, and after waiting 18 years, she has finally made her theatrical debut in her very own movie. The only problem is that Colorful Stage the movie, A Miku Who Can't Sing, is not a Hatsune Miku movie. It is a Colorful Stage movie. Now, I want to make it clear that I have been a Hatsune Miku fan for over a decade, but a fairly casual one at that. I became a fan through the Project Diva F games, and I have casually partook in significant games that have come out over the years, including Colorful Stage, but by the time Colorful Stage came out, I just didn't have the time to invest into playing it, so although I did play it for a couple sessions, I never was able to invest the amount of time necessary into it for me to become a true fan of the game. But I am still a Miku fan, so when I heard that there was a Miku movie coming out based on that game, I knew I had to watch it, and I was fairly confident that even though I hadn't played much Colorful Stage, I would still be able to appreciate it because at the end of the day, Colorful Stage is focused around Miku. So I want to emphasize that I am fully aware that this movie was made for fans of that game, but I figured since I was still a Miku fan, I could enjoy it, and while I did to an extent, it didn't take long into my viewing in the theater for me to realize that this movie was made as fan service first, and as a Miku movie second. I'm going to go over a brief summary of what happens in this movie, so if you want to get right to the review, skip to the time displayed on screen. The movie basically throws you right into the world, showcasing 5 groups of musicians from the game, and one by one, they all meet a Miku who has been showing up on screens around the city. The Miku keeps on trying to sing to random people around the city, and for some reason they can't hear her, and when a member of each group confronts her about what she's been doing, the Miku explains that for some reason her song can't reach anyone that she has been trying to sing to. Each of the groups then takes her in and tries to help her, but she is then transported back to her Sekai, which, from my understanding, is her native dimension, and all the groups follow her to it. Turns out that this Miku's Sekai is dying as it's becoming consumed by darkness, and as it is, Miku is forced to hear the anguish of the people who are hopeless, who she has been trying to sing to, but can't hear her. The dimension is then consumed by the darkness, taking Miku with it, but before she is gone, she pushes all the groups out of the dimension so they don't get harmed, but it turns out the darkness seeped into the real world and removed all trace of Miku's voice from reality. All the groups then come up with a plan to host a concert so they can do what the Miku couldn't and hope to inspire the hopeless people that Miku was trying to reach, and they do so successfully, which in turn powers up the Miku so she can escape her dimension and go into the real world and sing her song in full so that everybody can hear it, giving an uncountable amount of people hope, which destroys the darkness, bringing back all forms of Miku's voice back into the real world. The Miku then brings all the groups back to her dimension, which is now fully healed, and thanks them, but now that her purpose is fulfilled, she can't see them again after this and says goodbye for good. The movie concludes with each of the groups going back to their day-to-day lives, inspired by the experience as they all continue to make music. Now let's get the glaring flaw out of the way. This movie is an hour and 45 minutes long. And if we count Miku and the other Vocaloids, there are a total of 26 characters in this movie, and because of that, if you don't know any of these characters beforehand, you will barely get to know any of the characters in this movie, as this movie doesn't go out of its way to try to introduce many of them. Some of them do get a bigger spotlight than others, with the closest thing to a main character being Ichika, who I can't really say anything about because I'll be honest with you, I don't remember anything about her character other than a scene where she sings in public when she first meets Miku, and that's the common sentiment with every character. Because this movie expects you to be familiar with the game, it treats its characters like fan service cameos rather than actual characters. The only way you will ever be able to remember anything about any of these characters besides Miku is by associating them with certain scenes, like Saki, who has a reoccurring joke about trying to feed a cat, or Tsukasa, who has a reoccurring joke about being overly loud, or Rui, who for some reason seems super depressed. But those are the only characters besides the Vocaloids who I can actually remember anything about, and as I said, there are 20 characters in this movie besides the Vocaloids. I know that these are all characters from the game, so I understand why there are so many of them, but if you have never played the game before or didn't familiarize yourself with every character beforehand, the movie introduces so many characters that it's nearly impossible to keep track of who is who, and it becomes a giant blur of characters who you don't even know. And this is why throughout my viewing experience there was only one real character, the Miku who can't sing. For the record, there are actually multiple Mikus in this movie, one for each group of characters, which means there are technically 6 Mikus in this movie, but the only one that matters is the Miku who can't sing. The Miku who can't sing is a tragic character who, like any other Miku, wants to sing to uplift others' spirits, but because she suffers from some form of amnesia, she can't even remember the entirety of the one song she knows, making her futile attempts at trying to sing sad to watch. This Miku is truly pitiful, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean that you will probably feel bad for her throughout this movie, and if you are a Miku fan, even more so, because Miku is typically characterized as a character who loves singing and making people happy, and this Miku cannot do either of those things. She can't perform the very purpose she was created for, and due to that, she becomes an empathetic character who you desperately want to see succeed and overcome what she is going through. So although she may be pretty basic, she is by far the most interesting character in this movie, as she should be because she is the main appeal of watching this movie in the first place, and her character is all that more accentuated when you compare her to everyone else in this movie, who vary from being mildly entertaining to being so forgettable and pointless that you will not remember some of them even exist by the time the credits roll. And this rule even applies for the supporting Vocaloids. Yes, they are in this movie, but they truly do exist as cameos, as all of them maybe get 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, with the standouts being Mako, who gets the funniest scene in this movie when she interacts with her Miku, and Kaito, who surprisingly gets his own mini-arc. As for the Kagamina twins and Luca, they get the short end of the stick as they practically do nothing and have no standout moments. There is no doubt in my mind that having all these characters was the wrong decision to run with in this movie. Again, I know why they did it. These are all characters from the game, and this is a movie based on the game. But because there are so many characters, this movie can feel disjointed and hard to follow, but worst of all is how horribly paced this movie is because of the sheer amount of characters. You see, the way this movie is constructed is that there are 5 different groups of 4, which are all meeting this one Miku, and learning about her on their own, separately. I don't think any of the groups interact with each other with the exception of one scene where one of the members of one group bumps into another group while running by them, but because of this format, you have to watch as the movie shows every group discover each plot point one by one. As a byproduct of this, the pacing of this movie can slow to a crawl because you have to watch 5 different groups react to everything that happens throughout this movie, making the viewer essentially have to watch the same plot point unfold 5 times before the story moves forward. This issue persists throughout most of the movie, but it's at its worst during the beginning where it felt like it took forever for the movie to actually start going anywhere, and there is a point where Miku is mostly absent that dragged on for so long that I actually started to get bored and it lost my attention for a good 5 to 10 minutes. I think a reasonable middle ground that could have been realized to avoid this issue is if the movie just followed one group of new characters and all the other groups from the game all had cameo appearances and contributed to the plot in some minor way. Not only would it have made this movie far more digestible to people who haven't played the game, but would also have solved the overcrowded cast issue, which in turn would have improved this movie's pacing significantly. As a bonus, this would have also been a smarter marketing move for the game, because at the moment the movie primarily is appealing to already existing fans, and because the movie never spends much time with any of the game exclusive characters, it offers little reason for a person who has never played the game to give it a try, whereas if the movie focused on a new group of characters that we get to know over the course of the movie, and that group of characters were then released in the game, that would give an incentive for viewers who really like the characters to try the game, attracting a new wave of players. So I staunchly believe that even though this movie is meant to cater to already existing fans, the adaptation seriously fumbled the opportunity to not only grow its player base for the game, but it also made the quality of the movie far worse than it could have been simultaneously. However, it wouldn't be a colorful stage movie if there wasn't any music, and while this movie is by no means a musical, each group gets to play one song near the climax of the film, which were all okay, but nothing all that memorable. The same can't be said, however, for Miku's grand performance that the entire movie was building up to, where she sings Hello Sakai, which isn't only a good song and the best moment in the movie, but perfectly conveys what Hatsune Miku represents. Maybe not every Miku fan will agree with me on this, but what Hatsune Miku is supposed to represent is a jovial hope to inspire you to make your hopes and dreams a reality and have a fun time along the way. And the lyrics of Hello Sakai, along with its narrative significance, reflect that meaning to a T, as throughout the movie, Miku desperately wants to sing this song to those who are in desperate need of hope and inspiration, and once she does it, it reminded me of why I love Miku and what she represents. Her grand performance is amazing, and while I won't say it makes the entire movie worth watching, if you are going to watch this movie, it really hits hard because a Miku who can't sing is kinda a sad movie throughout most of its runtime. Like, the premise of the movie being about a Miku who can't sing is quite interesting and tragic in of itself, but throughout the entire movie, Miku is in a constant melancholy state, which can be hard to watch because she is usually depicted as such a happy and inspirational figure. And that's not even what made this movie so surprisingly sad, because on top of this Miku just being a sad character, she is punished throughout the entire movie. Having to watch Miku desperately try to sing to people just so she can cheer them up, and for them to not only not hear her, but see her as a glitch on their screens that make her nothing more than a nuisance to them, and for them to get angry at her, resulting in us having to watch Miku cry, was a heartbreaking moment that I would have never expected to see in a Hatsune Miku movie. And I wish I could say that was the majority of how dour this movie can be, but later we essentially see that Miku condemned to the ruins of her destroyed world, where she gives up on trying and lies alone in the visual representation of her failure to help others. Of course, as I already went over, she does end up accomplishing her goal of inspiring others, and her world is rebuilt, but even then, after all of that, at the very end of the movie, she is forced to be alone in her world again, making the ending of an already pretty sad film just bittersweet. Normally, I don't mind sad endings, but having an ending where Miku is left purposeless and alone, along with all the horrible things that happen to her throughout the movie, this film results in feeling way more depressing than I think the writers meant it to be. There is a credit scene where it is hinted that now that her world is restored, she is finally going to be joined by her own versions of the other Vocaloids, as we see what looks like Kaito stepping into frame, but it just doesn't feel like enough. After watching an hour and a half of Miku being sad and psychologically tortured, I wanted to see her get a more blatant happy ending. I wanted to see her rewarded outright for everything she went through. I wanted a fully happy ending for this iconic character, not an ambiguous hint of one. Colorful Stage, the movie A Miku Who Can't Sing, is a very underwhelming and fundamentally confused movie. I think the creators had a good idea in theory that simply fell apart when it was put into practice, as an adaptation of one of the most popular Miku games of all time isn't even a bad idea, but they put more effort into having an abundance of fan service than actually making a good movie that can stand on its own two legs. It did have some nice moments, as the premise was interesting and unique for a Miku movie. Miku herself had a derivative and simple story, but that was balanced out by the sheer fact that it's Miku, and all the horrible experiences she goes through makes it hard to not emotionally connect with her struggle in some way. The climax of the movie was a grand, wholesome celebration of what Miku represents to so many people, and there was even an after show once the credits ended that was like a mini concert where Miku thanked you for watching the movie and performed Hello Sakai once more alongside the other Vocaloids, which was pretty unnecessary, but was a sincere gesture that I appreciated. Everything revolving around Miku was serviceable to outright great, but just like I said in the beginning, this isn't a Miku movie. This is a colorful stage movie, and everything revolving around the adaptation of its source material made the movie worse with an overabundance of characters that ruined the pacing and took what was a fairly simple premise and plot and made it impressively hard to follow. If you are not a Miku fan, I strongly suggest against watching this movie, as it is aggressively newcomer unfriendly, and even for an over 10-year Miku fan like myself, I still felt left out. I know this movie wasn't made for fans like me, as this movie is purely a colorful stage movie made for colorful stage fans, and if there are any colorful stage fans watching this video, I want to know if you found this movie to be more enjoyable than it was for me, because I can't imagine, if you even are a colorful stage fan, that the bad pacing and bloated cast are film crippling issues that can be easily ignored.
A la sa sa ya di di da di di da da di